inviting me. I'm very excited to be here today to talk about something that is very near and dear to me and that I'm very passionate about. Welcome to my presentation, which I cleverly named 027 to 612.662, which is the Dewey Decimal Numbers for libraries. And the name of today, and it's Libraries and Menstrual Literacy. Hi, I'm Rakisha Kearns-White. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I am known in my library system, the Brooklyn Public Library, as the sex education and period librarian because of my many years of offering shame-free sexuality education programming and advocating for period equity for both staff and patrons. I have been a young adult librarian at BPL for over 18 years, and I have to say my biggest advocacy this whole time has always been making life better for children and teens. I was inspired to do that because at the same time I started at BPL, I became a mother. Not only have I been here for 18 years, I now have an 18-year-old child, and I also have a 16-year-old child. And one of my values when I came to work was like I was going to treat every child how I would like an adult to treat my child. And then I would, how treat every tween as they treat my tween, and so on and so forth. So here they are as teens, and I treat every teen as I want people to treat my teens. And what I do as a librarian is I try to make the library the most welcoming, inclusive, and safe space I can for all teens, regardless of race, gender, nation of origin, sexuality, or religion. And I especially started doing that about 7 or 8 years ago when our democracy took an interesting shift. And I've not stopped, I've ramped it up, and period equity is part of that. And as if you look at the slide here, just to let you know, I'm currently the counselor at large for public libraries for NYLA, and I will be running for re-election in November. So before I start my presentation, I want to go over some ground rules. Please take a look at the slide of community agreements and promises. But most importantly, I want to emphasize to you that I want you to approach what I have to say with an open mind and with a spirit of positivity. Talking about menstruation and puberty can bring out some triggers in people. So if you feel triggered or otherwise discomfort, don't feel the need to tough it out. I will not get offended if you leave the presentation. You'll get my email address and Twitter and such, and you can always ask me more questions later on. I'm very sensitive about that. Now, at the old age of 50, I make jokes about my puberty and period experience, but some of you may not be as advanced in age as me, so you might still be dealing with the fresh trauma of it. Finally, I'm not a doctor, but I play one in the library. Actually, I want you to know that I'm not a medical professional, nor am I certified to teach sex ed or puberty education. I am self-taught, and I have taken over 20 workshops in sexual health for teens, teen development, and providing consumer health information as a librarian. I do have about 20 CTE credits, but not to an end where I would be certified. Just a little caveat there. Today's purpose and objective to demonstrate that librarians and library workers can be centers for menstrual literacy and challenging period poverty. And when I say librarians, if you're not a librarian, please do not be offended. I do mean library workers. I mean, everyone who's in the library who works with the public. I just use librarians as a shorthand, because if you worked in the library long enough, you know that doesn't matter what your title is at the library. If you are in a library and you have an ID on, you are the librarian to that person who just walked in the door. Our goals for today that I hope we achieve is for us to see the big picture of menstrual literacy and period poverty, how to get stakeholders on board with menstrual literacy in the library, and access to resources to learn more. So what you see here on the screen are some really cool pictures of period programming that I've done over the past year. It was started off as an initiative that I started pre-pandemic, and it continues to thrive to this day. In the fall of 2018, a teen at the library had started her period unexpectedly, soiling through her clothes. She went to one of our safety officers and then to a male librarian on the desk, asking for assistance because none of our bathrooms had maxi pad dispensers. None of them had tampon dispensers. And because I was a woman and known for offering puberty workshops at my library and just all around known as big sis, auntie, mama, whatever you want to call me, of my department, I was summoned to help. I discreetly provided the young lady with period protection and a change of clothes. I had a t-shirt and a pair of yoga pants I kept in a drawer if I ever had a work accident, which could be my period or, finger paint because I work with children and teens. Shortly after that incident, I was very upset that our bathrooms didn't have any dispensers because when I started at the library, I recall us having a dispenser you could put in a nickel, then a dime, then a quarter, and then no dispensers at all, but to get period products. And I thought we should have that. We should get that back. But at the same time, I learned that the governor of New York at the time, disgraced Governor Cuomo, had required all public middle schools and high schools across New York State to have free period products in their bathrooms. So we work with kids a lot and teens and unhoused people. So I queried the library's administration and my fellow young adult librarians about replicating that in our library system. Like, how could we do that? Fortunately, it didn't take much convincing because as I was bringing it to the forefront, rumblings of conversations had already been happening. And so soon we piloted it, and now every public bathroom and women's bathroom across the system are equipped with free period product dispensers. Personally, my desire was to have them in all restrooms because men have periods too, but one hurdle at a time. Finally, in the spring of 2019, I read this really powerful book written by a college student about period poverty called Period Power, and I was inspired to propose a teen advocacy group to challenge the stigma of menstruation and to fight period poverty in Brooklyn. The name of that group is called the Cycle Alliance. I'm not trying to insult anyone's intelligence or knowledge base, but I want us all to be on the same page when discussing what it is when I talk about periods, period poverty, and period equity. So let's take a look at this diagram about the menstrual cycle. So first off, remember that PMS stands for premenstrual syndrome, which is the time before the bleeding starts. When the bleeding starts, that's called a period. Tissue and blood are both shed during one's period, as it includes the shedding of the uterine lining. When my daughters were, before they started puberty, and I tried to explain what the menstrual cycle is, I described it as, imagine you set up your table for dinner party, but no one came this time, so you have to put all of the dishes back in the cabinet, and that's the period cycle. In 2023, we will try very hard to not assign menstruation to just women. Trans men and non-binary people also have periods, and not all cis women have periods. So when referring to people who menstruate, I ask that you refer to them as people who menstruate, menstruators, or just people who have periods. Period poverty and period equity go hand in hand. Period equity simply means removing the barriers that prevent people from getting accurate information about periods and getting period protection products. Period poverty includes the inability to get period products and to have a safe and clean place to perform menstrual hygiene. Libraries can help with this, but we'll get to that shortly. Period poverty and menstrual literacy is also a men's issue, whether this be a cis man or a trans man. Please watch this brief ad from New Zealand on why male colleagues, patrons, politicians, and policymakers need to be stakeholders in any conversations about menstrual literacy at the library.
We're here to talk about an issue.
It's not a women's issue.
And it's not a men's issue.
It's a global issue.
In some parts of Malawi, the annual cost of sanitary pads is equal to the annual cost of school fees.
The COVA project and many other organizations around the world are working to provide access to safe sanitary care, education around menstrual health, and to reduce the stigma around this issue.
Part of that includes men having the conversation.
Yeah, that's right, buddy. I'm talking to you.
And we need to have conversations to understand that the purpose of this is so much more than this.
And to know that this is a tool for equality that can last for up to 10 years.
And to all the girlfriends of the guys that just tuned out, you can do better.
My nickname is better.
Period poverty impacts many people who menstruate and exist all around the world.
Girls missing a quarter of their education isn't good enough and impacts progress for everyone, even the global economy.
So it's time to start talking.
To stop being nervous to say words like menstruation and period.
Period.
To ban the phrase.
Is it that time of the month?
And to instead use our voices to provide solutions and support.
Because you can't spell menstruation without the word men, which is kind of f***ed up.
Period poverty, it's not just a women's issue.
Period poverty, we're going to delve deeper into this. What is it and why does it matter? Why does it matter to you? Why should it matter to me? Why should it matter to anybody? Period poverty describes the struggle many low-income women and girls and menstruators face while trying to afford menstrual products. The term also refers to increased economic vulnerability menstruators face due to the financial burden posed by menstrual supplies. These include not only menstrual pads and tampons, but also related costs such as pain medication, underwear, and laundering. Period poverty does not only affect women and girls and people in developing countries, it also affects women in wealthy industrialized countries. We are a wealthy industrialized country, but we have a severe period poverty issue in the United States. Close to 17 million people who menstruate in the US are living in poverty. And of those 2/3 of that population could not afford menstrual products in the past year. With half of this needing to choose, of this population needing to choose between menstrual products and food. And in case you didn't know, WIC, SNAP, any federal funded program to help people buy food does not include or cover the cost of diapers and period products. So you may have money for food from the government, but you still can't afford period products. And this is just not a poor person's problem or a working person's problem. This is an everybody problem. 14% of college menstruating people in the US last year had experienced period poverty because of the effects of the pandemic, supply chain issues, money, etc. And of those menstruating college students, 10% was experiencing period poverty monthly. Students that can't afford pads or tampons, it affects their ability to learn, school absences, or their ability to concentrate on schoolwork. Imagine trying to concentrate on a very dense lecture, but also worrying about if this pad that you've been wearing for 6 hours is going to last until you get home. Or if this balled up toilet paper in your underwear is going to absorb all the blood. I'd like to share a story. When I was in college in the early 90s, I did not have any money and I got my period. So what I ended up having to do, I had to collect bottles to get coins, enough so I could get $1 to buy a package of maxi pads from the dollar store until I got my work study paycheck 4 days later. Approximately 500 million women and girls and people experience period poverty globally due to a scarcity of resources and existing social stigma associated with women's pain and health. Also, climate change is now also affecting access to period products because unusual droughts or flooding has killed cotton crops, which cotton provides a lot of the material that's in disposable maxi pads and tampons. And when it comes to missing school, period poverty doesn't affect just college age students. It can affect children. Children that lack access to menstrual products to miss days of school, and missing just a few days of school can lead to significant performance gaps that are made worse by poverty and racism. Absenteeism is also linked to social disengagement, feelings of alienation, and other adverse outcomes that follow children even into adulthood. Just follow the trends and the studies that's coming out now about how isolation during the pandemic is starting to affect older, Generation Alpha now, and younger Gen Z students. So the first thing I want to do, because as soon as everyone talks about periods and puberty, first thing that everybody thinks of is sex education or sex. And I want to separate conversations about periods from sex ed. People first learn about menstruation when they are taught about puberty. The emphasis of most puberty education is that a person is growing up, developing so-called secondary sexual characteristics, and that an assigned female at birth person can now make a baby once they start having periods. There's very little conversation about reproductive health, gender dysphoria, or the emotional turmoil of having a period. As my 60-year-old kid recently remarked, one day you're just chilling and then, oh shit, you're bleeding out of your vagina. There is no preparing for that. So quickly, let's just take a look at what sexuality means when we're talking about sex education. We are referring to anatomy, sexual and reproductive health, sexual orientation, relationships, and not just romantic relationships, body image, pleasure, gender identity and expression, and sexual behavior. Menstruation is only 1/8 of that pie and deserves as much more thorough examination beyond the simple biological functions. When we're offering programs, discussions, or providing information about menstruation, be careful to not fall into the usual tropes or metaphors about periods. Let's talk about the emotional impact of menstruation, or what talking about or teaching periods can look like. First off, acknowledge that getting one's period is not a magical experience. People who start their periods earlier than average may feel isolated, underprepared, ostracized, or scared. And I bring this up because my youngest child was 9 years old. We were all scared. People who are assigned female at birth or trans men, menstruation is a monthly case of gender dysphoria, a painful reminder that their body doesn't align with their gender. 2, please, never, ever don't associate it with becoming a woman or an adult. Don't associate it with becoming a woman or growing up or preparing for motherhood. Many cis women like myself may have medical conditions that prevent them from menstruating regularly or at all. So we have our own special issues of not being woman enough because we can't have a regular period. Also, trans men aren't women, and this designation could cause gender dysphoria. Children get their periods, and they get their periods far from when they're ready to identify as adults. Don't curtail their childhood by letting them know now that they're an adult. Because of the association of periods with baby making, referring to an AFAB person as a woman subconsciously makes them a sexual being before their time. And not necessarily a sexual being by them, but sexual being by outsiders, people who see them. As a 9-year-old who gets a period, a grown woman ready to make babies, Not at all. Make any puberty and period programs gender inclusive, or make sure that period literature includes gender inclusive language. Like athletes, menstruators are often taught that the pain or discomfort they feel is normal and they should ignore the clues that their body is telling them. Don't normalize walking off the pain because someone says they have really bad cramps or they're really tired. Display books, flyers, information, or host programs that explore menstrual health issues. Acknowledge what you don't know and offer to help find information. Like I said, I'm not a doctor. I'm assuming no one in here is a medical doctor or a nurse practitioner. But if you are and you're also a librarian, kudos to you. That's badass. Let people know that you don't know everything, but you are willing to help find information. Also, finally, when you do offer period workshops or support groups, bring a bit of your whole self into the conversation. You don't have to reveal your most intimate details, but if you are a person who menstruated or is still menstruating, you can share a little bit so that person knows they're not alone. It's a way to connect with a person, human to human, and now they will trust you for the information you give them. Libraries are perfect spaces for menstrual literacy. Public libraries are free and welcoming places that provide facilities for patrons beyond access to just books and computers. For example, bathrooms, water fountains, heat, air conditioning, cafe, etc., phone chargers. Libraries in general provide access to information. That's what we do. We give people information. And literacy is just a type of information. Just put whatever cool adjective you want to put in front of it. Public libraries are landmark locations in neighborhoods. It's a place where everyone can gather. Academic libraries are landmark locations on college campuses. Local libraries create community partnerships, and they create community partnerships with the community at large and other organizations in the community. And whether it's a college library or a public library or a school library, libraries have a large, diverse, and transient cross-section of patrons, meaning that these libraries are perfect because we will reach so many people. And those people that we reach will spread the word and also reach other people. It's a butterfly effect. So now that we have a solid foundation on how libraries and library workers can approach menstruation outside the realm of sexuality and reproduction, let's examine what menstrual literacy can look like in practice in your library. It could be something very big or something very small. And we all know the smallest thing, a seed, can grow a big oak tree. So you can start with the smallest thing and watch it grow. First, create period-friendly libraries. If your budget allows, provide free period product dispensers in both the men's and women's bathrooms. Provide signage on the proper disposal of period products. Use graphics instead of words to accommodate non-English speakers. Or maybe someone who's getting their period for the first time and hasn't received a talk about never ever put a pad or a tampon in the toilet because that's disastrous. Provides discreet signage that free products are available in all restrooms. You know, sometimes people come to the library and they're not there to use the bathroom, but if they do unexpectedly have their period, and want to run because they don't have access to products, they'll know that the library is a place where they can get free products in the bathroom. I think one of the toughest ways that we can have menstrual literacy in the library is checking people's language. But I say, again, do this in a spirit of positivity. We're here to teach people, help people, not necessarily suppress them or, the modern vernacular, cancel them. You want to discourage superstitious or anti-period language or jokes. Be an example to your colleagues and your patrons. Don't attribute a person's bad mood to PMS or hormonal changes. Everyone is affected by hormones, whether they have a period or not. I remember telling someone who, for lack of a better word, was kind of a sexist person, used to say that hormone jokes weren't just jokes, they were accurate facts because women are more prone to being affected by their hormones. And then I said, well, at least our hormones go in cycles. Men have hormones that called testosterone, and that's around all the time. No cycle, no release. So there's no such thing as like free testosterone syndrome. You just have it all the time. And you would be offended if I said, your mood was based on testosterone. Needless to say that argument didn't work, but it was worth a try. Create donation bins or a free little period product library. If it's not possible to have free products in the bathroom where create this donation bin or period library where patrons, staff, and friends group can donate products for those in need. I just created one in my branch, and it's very successful. And if you are a student, school library, public library, this would be a perfect volunteer opportunity for teens and your teen advocacy groups, because that's my also other advocacy is getting teens to see all the cool things they could do in the library. Also, flyers, bookmarks, information sheets, book displays, anything that you could print out and put on display about menstruation, put it out. That's the very least we can do. Offer inclusive workshops about periods and puberty for your teen and young adult patrons. This can be a passive program curated by your library, or you can reach out to a local medical group to offer a workshop. You can also, depending on the demographics of your community, you can offer a puberty workshop for parents. And I did this a few times where you're giving them the information to pass on to their growing tweens. Finally, have I like to call it a community engagement table. Provide addresses to local politicians to encourage discourse on funding menstrual and reproductive health initiatives, providing free menstrual products in city and funded buildings, and repealing, if your county has it, the tampon tax. In New York, we no longer have the tampon tax. So here's the hardest part, and then we'll start to wrap up. How to get stakeholders on board. You have come up with this great idea to make your library more period friendly, to be a source of menstrual literacy in any form that you can, but you need to get the stakeholders on board, whether it be your supervisor, the board of trustees. And here are just a few suggestions. Stroke their ego. The library will undoubtedly earn goodwill and press, like we did during the pandemic, like we did when the bubble burst in 2008. Look how awesome the libraries are helping people. Aren't they great? And let them know the amount of goodwill will have a financial reward in the long run for the library. Stress how the library is a social safety net now. Every single library, whether it's college, school library, or public library, has become increasingly social safety nets that local and state governments should be providing for students, for senior citizens, for recently incarcerated peoples, not recently incarcerated, but people who are returned back from being incarcerated. I'm sorry, I forgot the proper term for that. We provide a lot of services besides just books. And this is just another one of those safety net initiatives that we can do. Encourage friends groups, alumni groups, or student unions to badger the administration or the board of directors or local politicians on the importance of free period products or information where to obtain free period products. Again, remember what I was saying earlier about the impact of missing school or missing work because a person can't get period products. That's a negative impact on the whole community, just one person or one family. And Let the stakeholders know that they will not be alone in implementing or be solely responsible. This is going to be a group effort. Finally, understand the demographics of your community and your administration and use your language wisely. If your demographic likes to think that the only people who have periods are cis women, then tailor your language accordingly. And when you get your idea approved, you can do whatever you want afterwards, right? Because they approved it, put products in all the bathrooms, make all the signs gender neutral. But the most important thing is to get them on board, and then we'll deal with the more difficult challenges when we get to it. So now I come to the end of my presentation. If you have any questions, I'm open to them now. Or if you can't think of any questions, I have my email address up here, theperiodlibrarian@gmail.com. I'm on library Twitter at Rakisha72. And I also have a stan Twitter, not a stan for myself, but a stan for the for K-pop and the K-pop group BTS. So if you just want to come have fun with me, I can give you my other Twitter address. I'm not always serious talking about periods, even though I do talk about periods a lot.